What's up guys, Sub-Zero here, back for another not VOD review actually. This is going to be a patch rundown for patch 14.17, because that is coming very soon, coming out on Wednesday, and it is a huge patch, so I wanted to go through all the changes, talk about my thoughts. There's some stuff in here that I think are kind of large misses. We'll see how it ends up being, and you know, I know this is just their kind of like patch notes before the stuff came out on Sunday. I believe it came out yesterday on Sunday, right? So they do have Monday and Tuesday to kind of like do final tweaks, a patch as they call it, before, you know, a potential B patch or C patch, if any of those type of things ended up happening. But still, let's go into it and talk through all the changes. I do think the majority of the changes are very good, but there are a few misses that I feel like are a little strange. So let's talk about those. Arcana, the emblem, more base damage but less scaling, I think makes a lot of sense. Mort made a very good case for this, that you never really want to play this unless you have infinite emblems. Then once you have infinite emblems, it is just broken. So I like this change a lot. And the Hecarim bonus as well being buffed, the AD bonus, really felt negligible. You almost never picked this. I still think you're probably never going to take this at higher levels of Arcana, so I feel like they could actually go even further than this, but maybe they don't want to go too far on this kind of stuff. And then the last Arcana change here, Xerath's true damage being brought down at higher levels of Arcana. Mort even said that he thinks this is probably too little. You could probably bring all of it down, honestly. This is the best way to cap out your comp in the game, and it still will be, especially because they're buffing Xerath and buffing a bunch of Xerath's charms, which is, yeah, we'll talk about it. Bastion buffs at 6 and 8, I think perfectly fine. No one ever plays that. So I have no issues with that. Chrono 4 buffs I'm also very down for. After the Karma nerfs, she has been less played, though there are definitely some people who are advocates of Karma and think that she can be quite strong. And so I am down for a 4 Chrono buff so that maybe Karma can be more playable. And it's a pretty sizable buff, right? The AP bonus, I don't know why it says 35 to 45 seconds. That's just AP, right? It all says sec after it for some reason. The time freeze increases is really nice. And then the last one, this is supposed to be 6-piece AP bonus, 60 to 80%, I think is also pretty good. So yeah, I mean, I like all of this to make potentially like some kind of 4 Chrono Karma comp be more playable. Speaking of other just kind of like more high verticals that aren't playable, Eldritch stinks right now, mostly because they made Syndra not a unit anymore, and they have fixed that this patch, so I'm down for a small buff to Eldritch, which this is. Honeymancy vertical buff as well, great. Honeymancy spat was, you almost never wanted it, even in situations where you would think you would want it, in like a Kog'Maw comp or something. You really don't want Honeymancer +1, it just doesn't give you enough, and 7 Honeymancer was really depressingly bad for the fact that you needed 2 emblems for it. Compare 7 Honeymancer to something like 8 Witchcraft, and it was not even close. Or, you know, 10 Portal, but obviously you have to be 10 for that. And then a little buff at 6 Hunter, I think this is fine as well. So majority, and this is a buff at 4 Hunter, but I think the higher levels of Hunter really weren't seeing that much play. So I think these are all actually fine for the most part. Fairy buffs as well, another vertical that needs some love, so I like all of this. Upping the damage amp by a little bit, upping the armor's health and armor and MR, and then also the damage. This is really big, that the 25 stack damage amp was 15 to 50%. I think, you know, like this makes you actually feel really good. I think it's Monarch's Crown, so this is the one where you have the full fairy. So I don't think, you know, it's not too big, but it at least will feel a little bit better. So I like these. This is not a vertical that people are playing very much, and I think it's a vertical that should be exciting to play, right? It has 2 4 costs in it. You should want to play around this vertical, ideally. Incantor, 4 Incantor buff, absolutely necessary as well. 4 Incantor is just not it at all, so I'm down for that. Mage buff here, and this is at 7 Mage and 9 Mage, so this is one of multiple Mage buffs, and this is, I would say, probably the most egregious thing of the patch, though there is some other stuff that I want to yap about a little bit. Mages are, I would say, in a pretty good spot. They have, I think the idea of the Mages change this patch are directionally correct once we get to like the Veigar and Vex changes. I think they make a lot of sense. I just don't think the numbers are that solid on them. I do not think we need to be buffing Vertical Mage and Veigar and Vex and Nami and the early game for it in Soraka, I believe, is getting buff. I don't think Mage needs 5 buffs. I think a little. I like the changes they do to Vigor and Vex, and so I'll talk about those later. But I think this is probably too much. I think mages, all the vertical itself could be untouched. Multi-striker also gets a little bit of a buff on 5 multi. We're talking about the weakness of 5 multi-striker compared to obviously like 3 is solid, and then 7 is really solid, and 5 just kind of gets you to 7. I think this is true, though I don't really know that multi-strikers need buffs. You know, we saw more and more of this like Ash Jax, like 1-cost reroll of multi-striker comp pop off towards the end of last patch, or I guess current patch. So I'm not sure that this is really necessary. It is nice. It feels kind of nice, but I would maybe want to see multi-strikers hurt a little bit if they're going to get this buff, but maybe it's okay. Portal. So this is kind of just like a smoothing out of Portal. Mort was talking about how the bombs feel really, really, really good. And it's a huge nerf, right? It's 6 Portal, 400 damage down to 300, but he's buffing the other parts of Portal to make up for it. More of a Poro Snack Seal, more of a flag base AS that obviously scales up with how strong the Portal is. I think this is fair. You are definitely really excited to see the bomb, and you don't really care that much about stuff like the flag is the worst one. I mean, the flag can be good. It's just, I wish it could be more, like the Portal could be a little bit smarter, right? When you have 1 unit alive and the flag comes out, it feels horrible. You know, in those situations, you really want something like the Krug, which I'm surprised is unchanged here, but maybe they think the Krug is reasonable. This doesn't really offend me too much either way. I think it's probably fine. All right, and then the last trait changes. Okay, so this is one I want to yap about a little bit. So Pyro, their idea is that you don't really get, it doesn't feel good to stack Pyro up. It's a very, very small buff getting, you know, a ton of Pyro versus very few Pyro. It's not that satisfying. And so this will make it a little bit more satisfying to stack up. And so to compensation nerf it, they are nerfing the execute threshold and the just flat Pyro AS for the Pyro units. The problem with Pyro as a trait is that because of the difference between 4 and 5 Pyro in the AS and this big jump in execute, you almost never see people play Pyro without a spat, and this isn't fixed here. I really would like to see 4 and 5 be smoothed out a little bit more, or even like 3, 4, and 5 be smoothed out a little bit more, so that it's not this huge jump. Pyro emblem makes it playable versus like almost unplayable without it. So yeah, like this really just encourages me to play more comps where I just play like 2 Pyro, like the Fiora Callista comp where you fit in 2 Pyro with Nasus Akali. It encourages me to play more comps that just play Nasus Akali and less Varus. And I want Varus to be a solid 4-cost carry that you can play without an emblem, because that's my biggest problem with Varus right now, is that you need Frost Emblem or you need Pyro Emblem to want to play him. I'd really like it if Varus could just be another AD option, and you're rolling down, you have something like an IE slammed, and you can either pick up a Callista or you can pick up Varus, and you can go either way. That would be really cool, but it feels bad right now. You will, if you find a random Varus, to play it, but it doesn't feel very good. And I want these to be like equally strong options without emblem. The Callista comp you can play easily with no emblem. The Varus comp you can't really. So that's how I'm thinking about it. I wish, I don't know, these changes went in a slightly different direction. Maybe somehow this makes Varus more playable, but I don't think it really does. I think it honestly pushes you away from playing like 4 Pyro type stuff and pushes you more towards just that 2 Pyro, which I guess in theory could just be Varus Nasus. And then you play other stuff around that. Maybe that's the version of the 4 that people play. Shapeshifter buffs, love this. Shapeshifter is, in terms of the tanks, you know, we have a lot of comps that utilize Bastion frontline. We have a lot of comps that utilize Vanguard frontline. Nobody's playing Shapeshifter right now. They're playing 2 max, like a Nasus and a Nico, or like a Nasus and a Briar. But you know, stuff past that, completely unplayable. After Cinder is thrown out of the meta, people aren't playing that Shapeshifter Cinder anymore, and they really were moving away from that anyway on the Cinder patch, so I love to see this. Shapeshifter is really fun frontline to play around, right? You get these insanely tanky units, you know, Swain scaling up, Nasus scaling up. I mean, really just bonking people, but you know, your unit transforms. Transformations are cool, even if it's just they get bigger. Sugarcraft, this is a big change actually. So the base AD and AP is buffed pretty bigly at 2. 12 to 20, and that is scaling up with the more the layers on the cakes you get. But the treat breakpoints are brought up, so now you know, you need an extra 50 to get to that second to last one. You need another 100 to get to that last level. I like this actually, because I do think it's a little too early, too easy to cash out max Sugarcraft, and it's really negligible to play early. So I actually like this a lot. And then a 6 Vanguard buff, sure, why not? So overall, I like most of these trait changes. Like I said, the Pyro one's kind of a miss in my opinion, and the Mage one is kind of a miss in my opinion, but overall I like these a lot. Sorry that this one is like not big. I don't know, I gotta zoom in. Okay, here's where I start to have a few issues. Let's start with the stuff I like. Ziggs buff. This unit stinks. I'm very happy to buff a Ziggs. Soraka buff. This unit also kind of stinks. They are buffing Mage and everything else, so it's like a little scary to buff her, but I think this is fine. This unit is so far out of the meta. You're really not that excited to play a Soraka opener right now, so I'm fine to buff her. Everybody else, I'm a little sus. Jace, in my opinion, is one of the best one costs in the game, and this is a 10% AD buff to him? I don't understand this at all. I don't think this unit, if anything, I think this unit needs to be nerfed. I don't understand why this unit is being buffed. And Mort even acknowledges in the patch rundown, he's like, Jace is secretly one of the strongest like one costs. He's really good at like item holding. He's great. And they're like, so we're buffing him. What? I don't understand that. And in a similar vein, Namzi and Twitch, I think, are actually very underrated. They're actually very solid units in the early game. The problem with Namzi and Twitch is that they have no obvious comp to play into. So, you know, you play Zoe very naturally into like a Rise board. You play Ashe, who is, in my opinion, just a worse unit than Namzi, but Ashe is a very easy transition. You slam a Gwynsu's Rage Blade onto her, and then put in multi-strikers, and then you transition into this Callista board. So easy. Namzi is who you would naturally transition into something like a Varus normally, right? You know, she's an AD caster carry. You throw a Shojin on her, you throw an IE on her, and then you put these items onto Varus later. Feels really good. You can put a Shyvana with her to get Dragon, and then maybe Shyvana can fit with the Nasus later, and obviously the Dragon bridges into the guy who flies all around, Smolder. So it makes sense to play Namzi into Varus. The problem is Varus, like I said, you can't really play him without Emblem. I don't think Namzi needs to be buffed. I think the line that you play Namzi into needs to be buffed. Same thing with Twitch, very similar. Item holder, you know, also you can play around Dragon, you play around Frost stuff with Twitch, which transitions very well into Varus if you're playing like a Frost Pyro Varus type setup. Once again, I think this unit's fine. I think the lines that he plays into are not fine. So I think, in my opinion, this is a pretty big miss. The other also kind of scary thing is there was already this this kind of like Namzi, Twitch, Jace, Elise comp that you would play with a golden, not a golden quest, but an upgraded adventures, the name of it, the prismatic one, where you 3-star a bunch of units, get a big thing. That comp is like pretty bad, but big buff. You could maybe see this become a viable one-cost reroll comp, which I'm not against. I'm not against, you know, Namzi, Twitch, Jace being a viable reroll comp, but I really don't necessarily think they needed all of this. I would say though that I want this to be a viable reroll comp. So maybe if, you know, you have to buff this stuff and then nerf some other part of these units, then maybe that's fine. It's just, in my opinion, they've really passed the eye test. Namzi early can do a lot of work, so I'm really surprised to see Namzi getting buffed pretty hard, right? This is a pretty big buff. So yeah, those are my. This is one of the parts of the patch that I feel like I have the most. I just don't really understand. These 3 buffs are quite strange to me. 2 cost here. Ahri, very light nerfs, honestly. Quite a small nerf to Ahri. Probably could have gone harder. I think Mort himself said that they wanted to go harder, but they're very likely reworking her next patch. But I don't see why we couldn't have gone a little bit harder, because I think this comp will still be very strong after this nerf. I don't think it's receiving any other nerfs. In fact, stuff like Vertical Arcana is being buffed. So, well, I mean, I guess Xerath isn't being buffed. That's fair. Like the Xerath Arcana is not being buffed, but you know, you stay on Ahri Arcana a lot in this comp. So in many ways, you know, the Xerath buffs are a buff to this comp. Ahri nerf, or not Ahri, Akali nerf. the kunai AD percent, so the when she jumps to the backline and sometimes just like one taps people. Another strange change in my opinion. Mort actually said on the rundown something that also was odd to me. He said, Akali is very feast or famine. Either she jumps to your backline and one taps everybody, or she does nothing. And then he said, so we're nerfing her. But like, I feel like the first part of that statement would say, okay, so we're gonna nerf her kunai AD, but then just like raise her base AD or something like that, so that you know, like she does more consistent damage, but she doesn't one tap backline. But instead, they're just reducing her ability to one tap backline, and then not buffing her back in any way, which seems odd to me. I think Akali's in a great spot right now. I don't think she's too oppressive. Sometimes she jumps to backline and one taps them, but that is very positioning reliant if you are good at positioning, or if she's just in a really, really strong spot. Obviously, this Warriors comp is really strong, but I think that could be addressed by, you know, hitting the Warriors themselves, because 4 Warrior is quite solid in that comp. And also Neela's tends to be the main carry in that comp, and Neela's unchanged here, so odd once again to me. Cassiopeia buff, absolutely necessary. This is one of the worst units in the game, so I really like this. You are never excited to see a Cassiopeia, so very, very excited to see this, and maybe some like Cassiopeia Shapeshifter reroll. Speaking of which, a Shyvana buff. Once again, we're buffing Shapeshifter, we're buffing Jace, we're buffing Shyvana. You can kind of see like all of these buffs for the same comp is a little bit scary, and it's a pretty sizable Shyvana buff. Just the armor Namar is already pretty large, and the AP ratio is you know, kind of whatever, but it's not bad. So I think it's a little scary to buff all of this stuff at the same time. Shyvana could also potentially fit into that Namzi reroll comp if that's something that you want to do, like a Jace Namzi Twitch, and then like Shyvana Elise can get thrown in there as well and reroll for that kind of stuff. So a little scary, but I wouldn't be too sad if that was a reroll comp. And then Syndra buffs. Once again, I think this is probably too light. Syndra's maybe the worst unit in the game right now. They absolutely made her unplayable after last patch, so I think you could probably go a little bit further on this. So yeah. Also realized we're 16 minutes into the video, and I am like maybe halfway through. So this is either gonna be a long video or I'm gonna start going really quick. Though I guess a lot of the augment stuff later is just pretty straightforward. Bunch of Hecarim buffs, actually. HP, mana buff, charge AD percent. They're nerfing the charge AP, and cleave AD percent going up. I do think Hecarim is just not really a carry at all, so I'm excited for possibilities of Hecarim carry. I do still already think Multi-Striker is in a good spot, so it's kind of interesting to me that they're buffing Multi-Striker kind of a lot, minus the nerf to Akali, so kind of surprising to me. But I mean, I'm down for Hecarim to be a playable carry. Jinx, this is a huge bug fix, actually. So if you guys didn't know, TFT is a game that has bugs in it. Last patch, Jinx her spell didn't scale with AD. Now, that doesn't mean that AD was useless on her, because obviously AD makes her auto attacks do more damage, and she's a very auto attack reliant carry, so AD was still fine on her. But that's why if you looked in the stats, something like a Deathblade actually looked pretty bad on Jinx, and it's because her spell didn't scale with AD, even though it was supposed to. So that's why I will always say check the stats, because sometimes even if you read the ability, that's not enough, because the ability secretly is lying to you and actually it doesn't scale with AD. That being said, that's a really, really big buff, so they're nerfing her AD, they're nerfing her spells AS and her true damage AD percentage. I think this is supposed to be like power level neutral, which I think is good. Jinx is a little strong right now, but I don't think she needs to be nerfed or buffed too much either direction. Swain gets a pretty big buff, more RNMR, more HP on the first cast, more HP on the other casts, and a little bit less damage. I think this is great. Once again, Swain and Shapeshifters overall quite unplayable. It is a little scary because once again, Shyvana buff, Shapeshifter buff, Swain buff, Jace buff, Cassiopeia buff, all these things are being buffed at the same time. I just have to trust that Riot knows what they're doing. This is a comp that's so far out of the meta that if they buff all of this stuff, it could still be like close to reasonable, but it could also be too bad, so or too much. We'll see. I'm a little scared. I maybe would go a tiny bit lighter on this stuff, but we'll see. Okay, here another change that I think is crazy. Veigar is being buffed considerably at 1-star and 2-star, and then nerfed a hair at 3-star, and Vex is also being buffed at 1 and 2-star quite considerably. That spell shield buff is very, very big. Now, I think these changes are directionally correct. I think Vex is actually pretty unplayable as a main tank, or at least she that's an exaggeration. She is not as strong as she should be as a main tank. There is no way that I should have a Vex 2 with 3 items on her and she should be getting blown up instantly. So I like these changes. I like these changes because Vex does feel quite weak at 1 and 2 star, honestly. Well, one of the worst tanks, honestly, at 1 and 2 star. And so I like this. The problem is Veigar, the only spot in the game where Veigar is weak is 1 and 2 star. If you get to Veigar 3 star and you get to late game and you have all these charms stacked up, you are always winning the game. It's why we saw statistics where, like, this is one of the highest win rate comps in the game, because if you can get to Veigar 3, you are just winning the game for free, because you're getting more HP every single round with the charms, and just scaling up into this unstoppable Veigar monster that's one-tapping your whole board. So I think I would like to either see a bigger nerf at 3 star or even just a nerf to his scaling. Doruwaza, who we were co-streaming with this last weekend, suggested making it so that he only gets 2 AP per charm. I think that's great. I would love to see that as an extra change here, because I think if you leave this as is, Veigar, you've just smoothed out his early game and his late game is basically unchanged, which is insane in my opinion. Okay, let's continue on. Mordekaiser 3 nerfs and 1 buffs. I think this is fine. It's not a huge change overall. Nico buff, once again, another shapeshifter buff, a little bit scary, but it's not a huge buff, so once again, kind of okay. And then a Shen buff as well. I think fine. Shen's not really known for his durability and his tankiness, so that's all right. All right, a bunch of huge 4-cost changes as well. Yeah, there's no way this video is under like half an hour, but I'll try to keep it to like 30 minutes. And also my phone is like going off. Hopefully that's not like, tell me it's not an email from work. No, it's a picture of a baby. Okay, that's good. Good for them. Congratulations to, I think that's my boss's child's child. Okay. Gwen. For a second I was like, you guys want to see the baby? But that's like definitely like, I should not do that. Okay. Gwen, big buffs, right? She's only 30 mana now. She gets two, every cast, she gets a snippet stack instead of every 2 casts. But her damage is being nerfed a little bit to compensate. I really think Gwen sucks right now. I guess their idea is if they don't compensation nerf her, because this is like basically doubling her snipping, that this would be an insanely big buff. I think she's pretty far from strong right now, so I'm gonna trust that this is I'm gonna trust that this is correct. Because I don't think she's kind of unplayable right now. But Gwen is a very like thresholdy type champion, where, you know, like if she's either like very weak or she's quite strong. You know, she's never going to be like just okay, just because of how like a melee carry like Gwen is going to function. So I'm down to trust that this is okay, and we'll see from Riot Games. Okay. Another change that kind of confuses me, Nami's bubble being buffed. Mort said, you know, Nami is not being used as a carry. She's being used as a CC bot. She's a great CC bot, but I've seen Nami's do 8-10k damage in a fight. She's not a solo carry, but solo carries are very rare these days in TFT. He was talking about Nami being able to potentially kill a tank. That's just not what Nami should be doing. She's an AoE champion that also CCs like the entire board. She shouldn't be able to kill a tank and CC the entire board and do AoE damage. Like, yeah, this is confusing to me. Slight Nasus nerf, I think, is quite, I mean, actually pretty big. Nasus nerf at 2 star, 120 HP. And that's obviously like scaling with Shapeshifter. I think this is fine, especially with all the other Shapeshifter buffs. Rise, this is an interesting change where he goes from 4 spell targets to 3. Now, he's doing the same amount of damage, so he's actually doing more damage to each target. He's just doing it to less units, which is interesting. I think this is fine. The idea is that he's not supposed to snipe backline as much. I think he probably will snipe backline every once in a while now if there's very few units in front of him, but I think this is fine for the most part. I kind of liked Rise positioning being like, you can, if you put him same side, you can potentially snipe backline, but I can understand how it could be frustrating. And then this basically doesn't matter. 3-star Tarek buffs. All right, 5-cost buffs. They're all great. No, I like when 5-costs are strong in TFT, and I think 5-costs right now are pretty bad. The biggest example being Xerath. We'll talk about him last. These are big Briar buffs. A bunch more AS on Transform, a bunch more Bite AD. This Ravenous damage per missing HP is like kind of a lot, right? Every 10 HP you're missing, you're getting 2% damage. So like late game, when you're missing something like 80% HP, she's getting 16% increased damage, if I'm correct. Sounds like a lot to me, honestly. Maybe I'm crazy. And she gets more HP on feed. This honestly seems like an overbuff in my opinion, especially with all the other changes to shapeshifters. I don't understand why. I think Briar's in almost a perfect spot right now. She's fine when you put items on her sometimes. She is... even without items, she's a CC bot. I don't really see why we need to buff Briar this much, in my opinion. Melio buffs I do think are very necessary, though this unit does almost nothing. You never really feel good about putting items onto him. And, you know, he's a support type unit, so, you know, he's not always going to be your main carry. But the fact that he, you know, his spell can do some damage, the fact that he can carry a little bit should be a thing that exists. So I like these changes a lot. Morgana buffs, another unit that, you know, her traits are quite good. Her, like, the utility of being able to, like, steal units and give you some econ is kind of nice, but she does feel kind of underwhelming. I'm fine with this. It's not too crazy. And then last but not least, Xerath buffs. I think this is absolutely necessary. This unit sucks. Well, his traits are great. Arcana is fantastic, and Ascendant is amazing, and they're buffing all of his Ascendant charms, which I think is... I think Xerath, the unit, sucks, and I think Ascendant and Arcana are broken. They nerfed Arcana, but they're buffing Ascendant. They buffed a lot of the Ascendant charms. That I don't understand. I would rather not buff any of the Ascendant charms and then buff Xerath even further, because another 30 spell damage on a cast doesn't feel like very much. Obviously, it's scaling up with stuff like AP, but this really doesn't seem like that big of a buff. I guess it's a 10% buff, which maybe is when you contextualize it as a 10% buff, maybe it's fine. I'm fine with the conservative buff here. I just don't understand why they buff the other stuff. All right. They nerfed a bunch of items. I'm not going to go through each one of these. They nerfed a lot of the strong items. I think this is generally fine. I'm still surprised there's no Jewel Gauntlet buff. Jewel Gauntlet has been the worst item in the game for like multiple sets. And if we're nerfing all the other items, why not bring Jewel Gauntlet up a little bit? But whatever. All good, I guess. Overall, I'm happy with these. Radiant items, I couldn't care less about this. I mean... I do care about this, but I'm just... hopefully we get these two closer to balance, because this is always a stats check. I mean, like, you know, you go... If you're going to play in a Radiant item galaxy, you go to tactics.tools, you go to Radiant item, you sort by average placement, and wow, Sunlight Cape is broken. Cool. And, you know, you don't pick stuff like Murmurello Nomicon, which they over-nerfed and stuff like that. Great. Cool. Very, very nice. So hopefully we get things closer to balance. I'm not going to go through each one, though, because it's very small changes. All support items being nerfed in HP. I think this is fine. The idea was to nerf the support, like dummies and golds and stuff like that a little bit, which I think this is a reasonable way to do it, I guess. So I'm down. And then on artifact items, basically all the untakeable ones are buffed. Corrupted Vampiric Scepter, only really good this set on Warwick, maybe on Olaf, needs a buff. Fishbone definitely needs a buff as well. Gold Collector definitely needs a buff as well. Mogul's Mail being nerfed even further. I think this is correct. For sure, this item has been dominating the entire set so far. And then a big Prowler's buff as well, absolutely necessary. So I like these. Augments. Yeah, I basically like all of these. I think they're buffing the stuff that is underperforming and nerfing the stuff that is overperforming. So I think these are all completely reasonable. He did say that combat bandages is bugged, which makes sense. The statistics on this augment look horrible. So stay away from combat bandages for the patch. Also free bit of knowledge for you guys. I didn't remember this, but speaking of bugs, Akali is bugged right now. Do not build Renans or Gunblade on her. Those two items cause her to freeze after she casts for about a second. Wasn't mentioned here because I don't think it's been fixed yet. So just don't put those. That's another check the stats. And wow, Renans and Gunblade look horrible on Akali. Why? They'd actually be pretty reasonable items normally, but they're bugged. So don't build those. Gold augments. This one's interesting to me. A golden quest now, instead of giving 3 tailored items, gives a tailored item and a tailored artifact for your 5 cost. Now, in some ways, this can be a buff. Because if you get an artifact for your 2-star 5 cost, that's obviously really, really good. And if you have a 3rd item to put on them, then your spot's crazy. I do think this is kind of smart though, because sometimes you'll just be in a spot where, you know, you get a Camille 2 and you don't have a 3rd item for Camille, and then you just have to put 2 items on her, and then you'll die because you don't have a 3rd Camille item. So I generally kind of like this, but we'll see. It might actually be a buff, but I think it actually is kind of smart. Ascension buff and can't appear on 2/1, beautiful, hate this augment. Avenge the Fallen buff, beautiful, hate this augment. Cauterize being able to appear on 2/1, this is the Pyro one, seems good. Clockwork, untakeable, so a huge buff I think is completely justified. Combat Bandages, once again, probably bugged. And then a lot of these, like Deja Vu Plus type things are only giving you 2 of the unit instead of a 2-star. I think this is reasonable. Dragon Spirit has been reworked because this augment, they nerfed Declaw healing last patch, and so the statistics on this augment looked horrible. Now it's just, it gives you a Declaw and makes your units with Declaw tankier, 100 HP and 10% durability. I think it's a cool augment. Kind of awkward because how are you getting to multiple declaws in a game? The thing with like the Edge of Night augment, not today, is that, or the Sterak's one, is those are augments that use 2 different components. So it's like, it's reasonable to see yourself getting to not today. But getting multiple declaws is kind of hard with this. And also, you often don't really want multiple mega tanks, whereas stuff like not today, Sterak's augment, you kind of do want multiple AD carries together, so, or like AD frontliners. So kind of a weird augment. I don't really love it, but probably better than the other one that just didn't really make any sense. Like the text just like kind of lied to you and said that it cared about Declaw healing when it was everything healing. Flexible nerf good, Hunting Frenzy nerf good, Keepers nerf good, Long Distance Palace. Like low-key, I don't want this augment in the game. It's a very cool augment, but it's so annoying. Okay, I keep it in the game. You know what? Actually, you're right. Keep buffing it. What they can remove is metabolic. This augment. In just modern TFT, it's not very good, especially with no econ traits. Molten Caramel nerf good. Potions 2/1. You could probably go even harder on this. This augment is nigh unpickable. Pumping up, once again, a good nerf, or a good buff. Spellblades, we've been talking about one of the most broken augments in the game. Good nerf. Sweet Tooth, good nerf. Three's Company, good buff actually. This augment is also like close to untakeable, especially because once again, it's not like you can pick up like random fortune from it. This is just a text change actually. Unleash the Beast, the Sterak's augment. Gave 60% attack speed, even though it said 30%, which is crazy. And worth the wait, another buff. Honestly, just bring it down to 0 rounds at this point. Prismatic augments, gonna blitz through these. Anger Issues, not buffed enough, honestly. This augment probably still sucks, more to acknowledge that. Blossoming Lotus, maybe you could do even a little bit more, but maybe honestly, this augment's takeable in some spots, so 12% I'm kind of down. Final Ascension, this is actually a pretty big buff, 5% and then another 5% here. Wow, okay. But I mean, this augment does kind of suck, so I'm down. Giant and Mighty nerf, good. And then a bunch of the econ augments being buffed up. These are all quite hard to pick, so I'm very much down. Yeah, I'm happy with all these changes. All right, we're at 31 minutes, holy crap. I'm just gonna blitz through these charms. I think there are new charms here. Yes, but it doesn't say, oh, I think that the slides I'm using don't show the new charms. Let me pull up the patch rundown. But I will say, like, overall, I like a lot of these, making a lot of charms cheaper, a lot of the weaker charms cheaper. I do think is reasonable. Okay, yes, here it is. So these are the new charms. Magic Mirror, I think, is really, really cool. You get a 1-star copy of Champion you feel less combat. I actually played this in playtest, and I took the augment that gives you a shop that's all 4 costs, took this and got like an extra 4 cost really, really early, which was so broken. So I think it's a very, very fun one. Can also like randomly get you stuff then like when you're playing reroll. So seems great, honestly. 300 shield tier 1 cost champions for 1 gold is really, really cool. I think that's interesting. This one is really fun as well. 1 gold, you gain 1 player health, gain 2 more if you lose next player combat, which is pretty fun. I don't know if it's really, 1 gold is a little expensive to gain 1 player health potentially, but I mean 3 HP is maybe worth. I don't actually know what HP to gold is in my head. Scrappy gives you 2 champions without items, a full item. Seems fun. And then Conjure Artifact, this is a replacement for Artifactinate, gives you a random artifact. I think this is, I mean, Artifactinate needed to come out of the game for sure. All 3s and all 4s being cheaper is good. These were really hard to click on just randomly. Assembly going from 10 gold to 12 gold. This is the one that gives you all the 1 cost. I think makes a lot of sense. This is almost an auto take because it was plus 4 gold. Conjure Emblem getting cheaper, great. This one almost unpickable and now maybe a little bit more pickable. Moonlight Ritual was broken in reroll, so I like this. Summon Dragon, the dragon getting nerfed, really good. And then Ultra Ascension going down to 0 gold seems nice and only 22 seconds, so maybe a bit more takeable. Okay, and then give me the last few charms here. Okay. I think these are all generally kind of weak charms that they're either buffing. This one's really, really cool piece of cake. You get 25 sugar stacks instead of 10. I actually love that a lot. Portal hopping, going down to 0 gold is nice because this one was kind of hard to pick. So I like a lot of these. What I will yap a little bit about are these, man. Chariot, Judgment, the Lovers, the Sun. The Sun? This is the one that gives you the 2 anvils, the support and artifact anvil, to 32 gold is insane to me. I think these were all honestly fine. The World, I believe this is the one that gives you all the 4 costs. I don't know why these had to be buffed so hard. Like I said, I think most of these were actually in a pretty good spot. And I know they want to feel really, really big and impactful and strong, so I guess that's the idea. I would just like to have seen Xerath buffed a little harder and these not buffed so hard, because I think these are already in a solid spot, and like 40 to 32 gold is nothing for you basically getting a prismatic augment. You're spending 32 gold on a prismatic, basically is kind of insane. So I don't know about that. And then we have bug fixes. Okay, so yeah, 35-minute video. Hey, it's under 40, not too bad. Like I said, overall, I think there's some kind of strange misses to me in this patch. I am excited for bringing some stuff back into the meta, like shapeshifters, like potentially being able to play more around stuff like Incanter and Fairy. I think that is very cool. I am just kind of afraid for stuff like Vigor. I hope Vigor gets A patched and they just nerf his late game a little bit. I think that would be perfect if you did that. And then once again, stuff like Varus. I really just wish Varus was playable without an emblem. Maybe we'll get to maybe there's some world where the 2 pyro change makes him playable without an emblem. You just play 2 pyro Varus with other stuff. We'll see. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about the patch down below. If there's anything you think that's like really, really out of line, good or bad wise. And yeah, I'll see you guys. Oh, announcement, if you made it this far in the video, I should have announced it at the top of the video, but me and Kai are bringing back Sub Wars. I think we're gonna have signups out tomorrow, so I'm definitely gonna announce it in tomorrow's video as well. But if you're interested, I don't know, just be on the lookout for a sign up link for Sub Wars. It's going to be this coming weekend on Sunday. Is when we're planning. Sunday, like morning/afternoon. So yeah, come out and play some TFT. We're up in the prize pool. Actually, you're not gonna win $1,000, but you're gonna win a little bit of RP, which is pretty cool if you do well. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.